With the opening of the new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem set for next week, Hamas is promising a bloody finale to the weeks-long March of Return protest. Hamas leaders have just delivered a chilling rally cry to hundreds of Gazan youth. They say that when the protests reach their climax next week on May 14th, their leaders will be ready to die for a decisive end to Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here. Now, Brett, the embassy opens in just a few days. How bad are these clashes going to get?
Well, I mean, this is the final hour. I mean, the entire idea behind the whole March of Return rally, right down to its scheduling, is to parallel that moment that the embassy opens its doors and is open for business. That's going to be a very painful moment for the Palestinians all over the world, because as much as Israelis, feel very validated by Trump's recognition of Jerusalem and, by moving the embassy, this is a big nail in the coffin to the dream of Palestinians that they've been fighting for, for quite some time now. And Hamas is providing the, let's for better lack of a word, better say, the more aggressive outlet for that anger. And you can be sure that Hamas wants a big, maybe even bloody finale to those protests.
Well, as you touched upon, the opening of the embassy in general is hugely controversial. That's because most of the world's nations have widely held that the fate of Jerusalem should be left between Israel and the Palestinians to decide for themselves in peace talks. The city is obviously sacred to both parties for religious reasons.
Sure, and reflecting that controversy is the fact that, next week's ceremony is going to be a fairly one-sided showing. I mean, the rumor is that European diplomats are actually going to skip the foreign ministry's big event altogether as their own show of protest. Something like, I think 86 ambassadors were invited altogether, but I think only about 30 as of now have formally accepted the invitation. But even this is going to be mostly Americans and Israelis present. Even some of the American embassy team that's based full-time here in Tel Aviv is actually not so thrilled about the move. I'm not going to name any names, but the feeling is actually pretty mixed in the office here, I will say, because they expect that this maybe is just going to spark more bloodshed and unrest in the future.
Well, what about reports that say Hamas is actually seeking a long-term ceasefire deal with Israel?
Right, so those rumors are looking more and more concrete, actually. Nothing's going to stop Hamas from finishing this March of Return rally next week. An unnamed Western country is, though, apparently already brokering some kind of talks on both, the Hamas side and the Israeli side. But Israel is definitely not going to consider, much of anything, even big promises like Hamas is supposedly making, until these weekly clashes are over. And the fact that these talks are happening at all means that Hamas may really be running out of options here.
Either way, next week will be a major week for history, so let's hope it can pass without any further bloodshed.
Sure.
Thanks for the update, Brett.
Of course.